Robert Kiyosaki, Retire Young, Retire Rich. Chapter 3. How I Retired Early. In the spring of 1999, I was scheduled to give a talk to a group of approximately 250 bankers in Los Angeles. Since I was to be the first speaker in the morning, I flew in the night before from Phoenix, where I live. After having breakfast, I sat in my hotel room and scratched my head so as what I could say to this group of bankers. My standard talk about financial statement, financial leverage, and the difference between the asset and the liability seemed inadequate for this group. Since they were more than ordinary bankers, they were mortgage bankers. I assumed they would know the financial basics I most often talk about, or at least I hoped they did. My talk was scheduled for 9:30 a.m. It was now 8 a.m. and I was at a loss for an angle or a new idea appropriate for the group. Sitting at the desk in my hotel room, I glanced at a complimentary morning newspaper the hotel had provided. On the front page was a photograph of a happy couple sitting in their golf cart. The bold headline over the picture read, "We decide to retire early. We decide to retire early." The article went on to explain that this couple's 401k retirement plan has done so well over the past 10 years in this booming stock market that they decided to retire 6 years earlier than planned. He was 59 years old and she was 56. The article quoted them saying, "Our mutual fund having done so well that we realized one day we were millionaires. Instead of working for 6 more years, we scaled back, sold our home, bought a smaller home in this retirement village, put extra money from the sale of our house in a high-yield certificate of deposit, reduced our expenses, and now we play golf every day." I found the subject for my talk. Finishing the article, I showered, dressed, and headed down to the waiting mortgage bankers. At exactly 9:30, I was introduced and brought up on stage. Lifting the newspaper up in the air, I opened my talk by pointing to the picture of the newly retired couple and repeating the headline, "We decided to retire early." I then stated the couple's age, 59 and 56, and read a few comments from the article. Putting the paper down, I said, "My wife Kim and I were retired early. We retired in 1994. I was 47 and she was 37. I looked around the room and allowed the difference in ages and date to sink in. After a silence of about 10 seconds, I continued asking, "So let me ask you this. How is it that I could retire 12 years earlier than he could, and my wife 19 years earlier? What made the difference?" The silence was deafening. I was off to a bad start. I knew it was early, and I knew that I was asking the audience to think instead of just listen. I knew that I probably sounded arrogant and cocky, comparing my early retirement to the couple in the newspaper. Yet, I wanted to make a point to this group, and it was too late to turn back. I felt like a stand-up comedian who had just told his best joke, and the audience was not laughing. Pushing on, I asked, "How many of you plan on retiring early?" After there was no response, no one raised a hand, and discomfort in the room was growing. I was dying on stage. I knew I had to do something quickly. Looking out on the group, I could see that most of the group was younger than me. The few then were my age were not impressed with my talking about retiring young. Quickly I said, "How many of you are under 45? Suddenly there was life. There was a response. Slowly hands began to rise from all around the room. I estimate that it was about 6% of the group that raised their hands, indicating that they were younger than 45. It was a young crowd, relative to me at least. Changing my tactic, I then played to this group asking, "How many of you would like to retire in your 40 and be financially free for the rest of your life?" Now the hands were shooting up with more enthusiasm. I was beginning to communicate a little better, and the audience seemed to be coming to life. The participants of my age and older began to squirm as they looked around at their younger peers, many of whom had their hands in the air, indicating they did not want to grow old in the industry. Sensing the discomfort of those of my age and older, I realized that I need to say something quickly to not alienate this group. Smiling, I paused as the hand came down. Looking at those in the group who were of my age and older, I said, "I want to thank the mortgage bankers of this world because you made it possible for me to retire early. Not my real estate broker, or my stockbroker, not my financial planner, and not my accountant. It was you, the mortgage bankers of the world, who made it possible for me to retire approximately 20 years earlier than my father." Looking out at the audience, I could tell that some of the uneasiness was dissipating, and I could now continue on with my talk. My acknowledgement of the industry seemed to have helped. I estimated that I now had about 80% of the audience attention. Continuing, I repeated the question I asked earlier, which was, "So how is it that I could retire earlier than the couple in this paper, and how did your mortgage banker help me retire early?" Again there was silence. I began to realize that they did not know how they helped me. Even though there was the same dead silence, at least they seemed to be more awake than they were a few minutes earlier. Deciding to stop asking a question that they were hesitant to answer, I continued. Turning to my flip chart on stage, I wrote in big bold letter, "Debt versus record." Returning to the audience, I pointed to the word debt and said, "I was able to retire early because I used debt to find my retirement. And this couple in the newspaper, the people with the 401 used the record to fund their retirement. That's why they took longer to retire." Pausing for a moment, I want to let what I had to say said sink in. Finally, a hand popped up and asked, "You are saying that the guy in the newspaper used his money to retire, and you used our money to retire?" "That's correct," I said.